Captain Jake Morrison could feel his life slipping away like sand through his fingers as he lay on the cold metal bed in the medical bay of the space station. The white walls around him seemed to glow with a strange light that hurt his eyes, and the constant humming of alien machines filled his ears with sounds he had never heard before. His body felt heavy and weak, like he was sinking into the bed itself, and every breath took more effort than the last one. The disease had come, from nowhere, sweeping through the human colony on the planet below like a deadly storm. Jake had watched his friends and fellow soldiers fall one by one, their bodies unable to fight off the alien sickness that their human immune systems had never encountered before. The doctors back on the colony had tried everything they knew, but nothing worked against this strange plague that seemed designed to destroy human life. Now Jake found himself on this alien research station, surrounded by creatures he had only seen in movies and books back on Earth. The Zephyrians were tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like smooth stone and large black eyes that seemed to see everything. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their hands moved with a grace that made Jake think of dancers. These beings had offered to help when the human colony sent out desperate calls for medical assistance, and they had brought Jake and the other sick humans to their advanced medical facility. Dr. Veltar was the lead doctor among the Zephyrians, and he had been working day and night to try to save the human patients. Jake could see the concern in those large black eyes, even though the alien's face showed no expression that Jake could understand. The doctor moved around Jake's bed with quick, efficient movements, checking the strange machines that monitored every part of Jake's failing body. Jake knew he was dying, and the knowledge sat heavy in his chest like a cold stone. He had faced death before in battle, had seen friends die in his arms, but this felt different. This felt lonely and far from home, surrounded by beings who meant well, but could never understand what it meant to be human. The medicine they gave him helped with the pain, but it could not touch the deeper ache in his heart. As the hours passed, Jake's thoughts kept returning to Earth, to the small apartment he had shared with his dog Rex before being deployed to this distant world. Rex was a German shepherd with black and tan fur and the most intelligent brown eyes Jake had ever seen in any creature. The dog had been his constant companion for 5 years, through good times and bad, through lonely nights and happy mornings. Jake remembered the day he had found Rex at the animal shelter, just a scared puppy who had been abandoned by his previous owners. The little dog had looked up at Jake with those big brown eyes, and something had clicked between them that Jake could not explain in words. From that moment on, they had been inseparable, 2 souls who understood each other without needing to speak. Rex had learned to read Jake's moods better than any human ever had. When Jake came home stressed from work, Rex would quietly bring him his favorite toy and lay his head on Jake's lap. When Jake was happy, Rex would dance around the apartment with his tail wagging so hard his whole body wiggled. During thunderstorms, when Rex was scared, Jake would hold the big dog close and tell him stories until the fear passed. The hardest part of leaving for this mission had been saying goodbye to Rex. Jake had arranged for his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Betty Walsh, to take care of the dog while he was away. Betty loved Rex almost as much as Jake did, and she had promised to spoil him with treats and long walks in the park. But Jake knew that Rex would be waiting for him to come home, watching the door and listening for his footsteps. Now, as Jake felt his strength fading, he realized that he would never see Rex again. The thought brought tears to his eyes, and he tried to hide them from Dr. Veltar, who was adjusting one of the machines beside his bed. But the alien doctor noticed everything, and those large black eyes studied Jake with what might have been curiosity. Jake's breathing became more difficult, and he could feel his heart struggling to keep beating. The machines around him began making different sounds, more urgent beeps and whirs that told everyone in the room that time was running out. Dr. Veltar moved faster now, his forearms working on different controls and monitors, but Jake could see in those alien eyes that even their advanced technology had limits. It was then that Jake made his decision. He knew it was probably impossible, knew it was asking too much, but he had to try. With great effort, he reached out and touched Dr. Veltar's arm, surprising the alien doctor who turned to look at him. Jake's voice was weak and rough when he spoke, barely more than a whisper. "Doctor, I need to ask you something important. I know I'm dying and I accept that, but I have one last request. Dr. Veltar leaned closer to hear better, those large eyes focusing completely on Jake's face. I have a dog back on Earth, Jake continued, each word taking precious energy. His name is Rex and he's been my best friend for 5 years. I know this sounds crazy, and I know Earth is far away, but could you please bring him here so I can see him one more time before I die? Dr. Veltar's head tilted to one side, in a gesture that reminded Jake somehow of Rex, when the dog was trying to understand something new. The alien doctor was quiet for a long moment, and Jake could almost see him thinking, processing this strange request from a dying human. You want us to bring an animal here? Dr. Veltar said slowly, his voice carrying the musical quality that all Zephyrians had when they spoke. This creature means much to you. Jake nodded, too weak now to speak much more. He's all I have left, he whispered. Please. Dr. Veltar looked at the monitors showing Jake's failing vital signs, then back, at the human's face. In his own culture, attachment to lower species was considered primitive and illogical, but something in Jake's voice and eyes made him pause. There was a depth of emotion there that the Zephyrian doctor had never encountered before, something that spoke of bonds deeper than mere ownership or utility. I will consider your request, Dr. Veltar said finally, and Jake closed his eyes in relief, holding on to that small hope as darkness began to close in around him. Dr. Veltar left Jake's bedside with the human's words echoing in his mind as he walked through the curved corridors of the research station. The request seemed impossible and illogical by every standard his species understood, yet something about the dying human's desperation had touched a part of his consciousness that he did not fully comprehend. He needed to speak with the station council about this matter, though he already knew what their response would be. The council chamber was a large circular room with walls that showed the stars outside, making it feel like they were floating in space itself. Commander Crickstall sat at the center of the curved table, his forearms folded in the traditional posture of authority. The other council members were arranged around him, their large black eyes all turning to focus on Dr. Veltar as he entered the chamber. Dr. Veltar explained Jake's condition first, detailing how the human plague was progressing and how little time remained. The council listened with the patient attention their species was known for, occasionally asking technical questions about the medical procedures being attempted. When he finished the medical report, Dr. Veltar took a deep breath and presented Jake's final request. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the gentle hum of the station's life support systems. Commander Crickstall's expression, if it could be called an expression on a Zephyrian face, showed clear disapproval. The other council members exchanged glances with their large eyes, communicating in the subtle ways that their species had developed over thousands of years. You are asking us to authorize a 3-month journey to Earth, Commander Crickstall said slowly, his musical voice carrying undertones of disbelief. You want us to use valuable resources and risk one of our fastest ships to retrieve a lower life form for a dying human who will likely not survive another week. Dr. Veltar had expected this response, but he had also come prepared with arguments. Commander, this human is not just any dying patient. Captain Jake Morrison is the same, human who developed the cure for the Andorian virus 2 years ago. His research saved millions of lives across 17 different species, including our own. The reminder caused a stir among the council members. The Andorian virus had been a galactic crisis that threatened to wipe out entire civilizations before. Jake's breakthrough had led to a universal cure. The human had worked tirelessly for months, sharing his findings freely with all species, without asking for payment or recognition. That service was notable, admitted Council Member Zalthea, her voice softer than the commander's. But it does not change the illogical nature of this request. What purpose could bringing this creature serve except to satisfy primitive emotional attachment? Dr. Veltar had been studying human psychology for several years as part of his medical research, and he had noticed patterns that his colleagues often missed. Perhaps that is exactly what we should be investigating, he said carefully. Human emotional attachments appear to have biological effects that our science does not fully understand. The human literature speaks of healing properties in their bonds with other species. Commander Crixtall's forearms unfolded as he leaned forward, his interest clearly caught despite his skepticism. You believe there is scientific value in studying this attachment. I believe there may be aspects of human biology and psychology that we have overlooked, Dr. Veltar replied. Their emotional responses often trigger physical changes that our monitoring equipment can detect but not explain. If we are to truly understand human physiology, we may need to understand their emotional bonds as well. The council debated for nearly an hour, weighing the costs and benefits of such an unprecedented mission. Earth was indeed 3 months away, at maximum warp speed, and using one of their fastest courier ships for such a purpose would be expensive and potentially dangerous. The ship would have to travel through several systems where pirates and hostile forces operated, risking both crew and vessel for what most considered a dying human's delusion. Council member Thavel raised another concern. Even if we authorize this mission, how do we know the creature will survive the journey? These Earth animals are not designed for space travel, and the stress could kill it before it reaches the station. Dr. Veltar had already considered this problem. I have researched human companion animals and their physical capabilities. This species they call dogs are remarkably adaptable, and we can modify one of our biocontainment units to provide appropriate atmosphere and gravity. The journey will be difficult but not impossible. The debate continued as the council examined every aspect of the proposed mission. The resources required would be substantial, and there was no guarantee that the human would even survive long enough to see his companion. Some members argued that their energy would be better spent trying to save the other human patients, who still had a chance at recovery. But Dr. Veltar pressed his case with quiet determination. This human gave freely of his knowledge to save. Lives across the galaxy, he reminded them. Perhaps we owe him this one request regardless of whether we understand its purpose. Finally, Commander Crixtall called for a formal vote. The council members activated their individual voting devices, and the results appeared on the central display. The vote was close, but it passed by a narrow margin. Dr. Veltar felt a surge of relief and gratitude toward those who had supported his position. Very well, Commander Crixtall announced. We will authorize the mission, but with strict limitations. The courier ship will have 7 days to complete the journey to Earth, retrieve the creature, and return. If Captain Morrison dies before the mission is complete, the ship will return immediately. Dr. Veltar bowed in the traditional gesture of respect. I understand the conditions, Commander. I will personally oversee the mission preparations. As the council members filed out of the chamber, Dr. Veltar remained behind to contact Earth and arrange for the creature's retrieval. He was taking an enormous risk with his career and reputation, but something deep in his scientific curiosity told him that this mission might reveal important truths about human nature that his species had never considered. The fastest ship in their fleet was the Stellar Wind, a sleek vessel designed for emergency medical evacuations and urgent diplomatic missions. Dr. Veltar worked with the ship's crew to modify the cargo bay with appropriate life support systems for the Earth animal, consulting human databases to understand the specific needs of the species called dogs. Within hours, the Stellar Wind was ready to depart on its unusual mission. As Dr. Veltar watched the ship disappear into the darkness of space, he wondered if he had made the right choice. Only time would tell if this act of compassion would prove to be foolish sentiment or groundbreaking science. Back in the medical bay, Jake Morrison continued his slow decline, unaware that across the galaxy, beings he had never met were risking everything to fulfill his final wish. Lieutenant Amy Chen sat in her small office at the Military Communications Center on Earth, staring at the message on her screen in complete disbelief. She had received strange orders before during her 10 years of service, but nothing had ever come close to this level of bizarre. The official communication from Galactic Command was requesting immediate assistance in locating and transporting one German shepherd named Rex to a research station in the Kepler system. Amy read the message 3 more times to make sure she understood correctly. Captain Jake Morrison, currently dying of an alien plague on a distant space station, had made a final request to see his dog. The alien doctors had somehow agreed to this request, and were sending a ship to collect the animal. Amy's job was to find Rex and prepare him for the most unusual journey any Earth dog had ever taken. The address listed in Jake's military file led Amy to a quiet residential neighborhood where small houses sat behind white picket fences and old oak trees lined the streets. She found the house number and knocked on the door, not quite sure how to explain her mission to whoever answered. The door opened to reveal an elderly woman with silver hair and kind blue eyes, wearing a flower-printed dress and a worried expression. "Mrs. Betty Walsh," Amy said, showing her military identification. "I'm Lieutenant Amy Chen. I'm here about Rex, Captain Morrison's dog." Betty's hand flew to her heart, and her face went pale. "Oh no, has something happened to Jake? I've been so worried. Since we lost contact with the colony," Amy quickly explained the situation, watching as Betty's expression changed from fear to amazement to something that looked like hope mixed with heartbreak. When Amy finished explaining about Jake's condition and his final request, Betty was wiping tears from her eyes with a tissue. "That boy loves this dog more than anything in this world," Betty said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Rex has been waiting by the window every single day for 2 years, watching for Jake to come home. The poor thing barely eats sometimes, just sits there looking so sad and lost." Betty led Amy through her small house to the backyard where they found Rex lying in the shade of an apple tree. The German Shepherd was magnificent, with thick black and tan fur that gleamed in the sunlight and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to hold depths of understanding. When he saw the women approaching, Rex lifted his head and his tail gave a small wag, but Amy could see the sadness that Betty had described. "He knows something is wrong," Betty continued, kneeling down to stroke Rex's head. "Dogs are so much smarter than people give them credit for. For the past week he's been restless and whining, pacing around the house like he's trying to tell me something important. I think somehow he knows that Jake needs him." Amy knelt down beside Rex and extended her hand for him to sniff. The dog examined her carefully, his nose working to understand who she was and why she was there. After a moment, Rex allowed her to pet his head, and Amy was struck by how soft his fur was and how gentle his eyes seemed despite his size and obvious strength. "The aliens are sending a special ship to pick him up," Amy explained. "They've modified it with life support systems that should keep him safe during the journey. But I have to be honest with you, Mrs. Walsh. Space travel is dangerous, and there are no guarantees that Rex will survive the trip." Betty was quiet for a long moment, her hand still stroking Rex's fur as she thought about the decision. "What do you think Rex would want?" she asked finally. "If he could understand what was happening, what would he choose?" Amy looked into Rex's brown eyes and saw an intelligence there that surprised her. "I think he would want to be with Jake no matter what the risk," she said softly. Betty nodded, tears flowing freely now. "Then we have to let him go. Jake saved my grandson's life 3 years ago when that building collapsed downtown. He pulled little Billy out of the rubble with his own hands and stayed with him until the ambulances came. If Jake needs Rex now, then Rex needs to go to him." The preparations for Rex's journey took most of the day. Amy had received detailed instructions from the alien doctors about what the dog would need during the trip. She gathered Rex's favorite toys, his blanket that smelled like Jake, and enough of his regular food to last several weeks. The aliens had also requested medical information about Rex, so Amy took him to a veterinarian for a complete health check. Dr. Susan Martinez, the veterinarian, was amazed by the story and insisted on providing additional medical supplies for Rex's journey. "This is the most incredible thing I've ever heard," she said as she examined Rex thoroughly. "He's in perfect health, strong and intelligent. If any dog can handle a trip to the stars, it would be this one." Rex seemed to understand that something important was happening. He was more alert than he had been in months, his ears perked up and his tail wagging with increasing excitement. When Amy packed his belongings, Rex watched every item go into the travel case as if he was making sure nothing important was left behind. That evening, Betty prepared a special dinner for Rex, cooking him a steak and giving him all his favorite treats. She told him stories about Jake, reminding him of all the good times they had shared together. "You're going to see Jake again," she whispered to the dog as he lay with his head in her lap. "You're going to take care of him just like you always have." The alien ship arrived just after midnight, landing silently in the field behind Betty's house. Amy had never seen anything like it before. The vessel was sleek and silver, shaped like a teardrop with no visible engines or windows. A door appeared in its side as if the metal had simply dissolved away, and two figures emerged. The Zephyrians were tall and graceful, moving with an otherworldly elegance that made Amy think of angels or spirits. They spoke in musical voices that somehow conveyed kindness despite the alien sounds. They examined Rex carefully, scanning him with devices that glowed softly in the darkness. "The creature appears healthy and suitable for travel," one of the aliens said in accented but clear English. "We have prepared a special compartment that will maintain Earth conditions during the journey. The animal will be comfortable and safe." Rex showed no fear of the aliens, which surprised everyone. Instead, he seemed curious about these strange beings, sniffing at them carefully and allowing them to examine him. When they led him toward the ship, he followed willingly, as if he understood that this was his path to Jake. Betty hugged Rex one last time, burying her face in his soft fur and whispering words of love and encouragement. "Bring Jake home if you can," she told him. "Both of you come home safe." As the ship lifted silently into the night sky, Amy and Betty stood watching until it disappeared among the stars. Rex was beginning the most extraordinary journey any Earth dog had ever taken, traveling across the galaxy to answer his human's final call for companionship. Inside the ship, Rex settled into his specially prepared compartment, surrounded by familiar smells and sounds from home. As the vessel jumped into hyperspace, the dog somehow seemed to know that he was finally going where he belonged, racing through the cosmos toward the one person who meant everything to him. The stellar wind made the journey from Earth to the research station in record time, pushing its engines beyond normal safety limits as Dr. Veltar had quietly authorized. Inside the ship, Rex had proven to be an excellent space traveler, adapting to the artificial gravity and closed environment better than anyone had expected. The ship's crew, initially puzzled by their unusual cargo, had grown fond of the Earth animal during the journey. Captain Zareth, the Zephyrian commander of the stellar wind, reported to Dr. Veltar as soon as they docked with the research station. "The creature survived the journey well," he said with something that might have been admiration in his musical voice. "It showed remarkable intelligence and calm throughout the trip. I have never seen such behavior in a lower life form, Doctor." Veltar felt a mixture of relief and anticipation as he made his way to the docking bay. Jake's condition had continued to deteriorate during Rex's journey, and there had been moments when the human's vital signs had dropped so low that death seemed imminent. Only the most advanced Zephyrian medical technology was keeping him alive, and even that was reaching its limits. When the ship's cargo door opened, Rex emerged cautiously into the alien environment of the space station. The dog's brown eyes took in everything around him with alert intelligence, his nose working overtime to process the thousands of new scents that filled this strange place. Despite being surrounded by alien technology and beings unlike anything he had ever encountered, Rex showed no fear, only a focused determination that impressed the watching Zephyrians. Dr. Veltar approached slowly, extending one of his 4 hands for Rex to examine. The dog sniffed carefully at the alien doctor, his tail giving a small wag as if he somehow understood that this being was trying to help. Rex allowed Dr. Veltar to attach a small translator device to his collar, a precaution that would help the medical staff monitor his vital signs during his stay on the station. The journey through the station's corridors was like something from a science fiction movie. Rex walked beside Dr. Veltar with steady confidence, his claws clicking on the metal floor as they passed through areas filled with advanced technology and alien equipment. Other Zephyrians stopped their work to watch this unprecedented sight, their large black eyes following the Earth animal with undisguised curiosity. As they approached the medical bay, Rex suddenly became more alert, his ears perking up and his pace quickening. Somehow, despite all the alien smells and sounds surrounding him, he had detected something familiar, something that called to him across the vastness of space and species. Dr. Veltar observed this behavior with growing fascination, making mental notes about the creature's sensory capabilities. Jake Morrison lay unconscious in his medical bed, surrounded by the humming machines that were keeping him alive. His breathing was shallow and labored, and his skin had taken on the pale, translucent quality that indicated the final stages of the alien disease. The other medical staff moved quietly around his bed, checking readings and adjusting treatments, but their expressions showed that they held little hope for recovery. When Rex entered the medical bay, something extraordinary happened. Before any of the humans or aliens in the room could react, Rex went directly to Jake's bedside as if guided by an invisible force. The dog's entire body language changed from cautious exploration to focused urgency, and he placed his front paws on the edge of the bed, stretching his neck to get closer to his unconscious human. The monitoring equipment immediately began registering changes in Jake's vital signs. His heart rate, which had been weak and irregular for days, suddenly stabilized into a stronger, more regular rhythm. His blood pressure improved and his breathing became deeper and more natural. The medical staff watched in amazement as readings that had been declining for weeks suddenly began moving in positive directions. Rex gently placed his head on Jake's chest, his brown eyes never leaving his human's face. The dog's tail began wagging slowly, and he made soft whining sounds that seemed to carry across the room like a song of welcome and love. It was as if Rex was calling to Jake across the darkness of illness, telling him that he was no longer alone. Jake's eyes fluttered open for the first time in 2 days. For a moment he seemed confused, unsure of where he was or what was happening. Then his gaze focused on the familiar black and tan fur pressed against his chest, and recognition dawned in his eyes like sunrise after a long night. His hand, which had been too weak to move for hours, slowly rose to touch Rex's head. "Rex," Jake whispered, his voice rough with emotion and medication. "You came. I can't believe you're really here." Rex's tail wagged harder, and he gently licked Jake's hand, his whole body vibrating with joy and relief. The dog seemed to be examining every inch of his human, checking to make sure Jake was really there and really alive. For his part, Jake buried his fingers in Rex's soft fur, drawing strength and comfort from the familiar warmth of his companion. Dr. Veltar watched this reunion with growing amazement. The monitoring equipment showed that Jake's stress hormones had dropped dramatically within minutes of Rex's arrival. His immune system readings, which had been virtually non-existent, were showing signs of increased activity. Most remarkably, the inflammation markers that indicated the progress of the alien disease had begun to decrease for the first time since Jake had become ill. The other Zephyrian medical staff gathered around to observe this unprecedented phenomenon. They had studied human biology for years, but they had never seen anything like the dramatic improvement in Jake's condition. It was as if the presence of this earth animal was triggering healing responses that their advanced medicine could not achieve. "Good boy, Rex," Jake said softly, tears streaming down his face as he continued to stroke his dog's fur. "I missed you so much. I was so scared I would never see you again." Rex seemed to understand every word, his brown eyes bright with intelligence and love. He carefully positioned himself so that he was touching Jake, but not interfering with any of the medical equipment. It was clear that the dog intended to stay right where he was, guarding his human and providing whatever comfort and healing his presence could offer. Dr. Veltar made detailed observations of the interaction between human and animal, documenting every change in Jake's medical readings. What he was witnessing challenged everything his species understood about biology and medicine. The bond between these two beings was not just emotional, but appeared to have measurable physical effects that could potentially revolutionize their understanding of healing. As the hours passed, Jake's improvement continued. His color returned to normal, his breathing became strong and steady, and his vital signs stabilized at levels that had seemed impossible just hours before. Rex never left his side, maintaining constant contact as if his presence was literally keeping his human alive. The reunion that had begun as a dying man's final wish was becoming something far more significant. It was the beginning of a discovery that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about the healing power of love between species. Dr. Veltar had been a medical researcher for over 30 years, and in all that time he had never encountered anything as fascinating as the bond between Jake Morrison and his dog Rex. As he observed their interaction over the following days, He began to notice patterns that defied everything his species understood about biology and healing. Rex was not just providing emotional comfort to his human companion. He was somehow detecting and responding to changes in Jake's condition before even the most advanced medical equipment could register them. The first time Dr. Veltar witnessed this phenomenon, he thought it might be coincidence. Rex had been lying peacefully beside Jake's bed when suddenly the dog became alert, his ears perking up and his nose working intensively. Rex gently nuzzled Jake's left arm, whining softly, and looking up at the monitoring equipment as if trying to communicate something urgent. 3 minutes later, the medical scanners detected a dangerous drop in circulation to that exact area of Jake's body. Dr. Veltar immediately began running discreet scans on Rex himself, using portable equipment that would not disturb the dog or interfere with Jake's recovery. What he discovered amazed him beyond anything he had encountered in his scientific career. Rex's olfactory system was incredibly sophisticated, capable of detecting chemical changes in Jake's body that were measured in parts per billion. The dog could smell hormonal fluctuations, changes in blood chemistry, and even the early signs of cellular distress that preceded serious medical complications. The second incident occurred during Jake's third day of recovery. Rex had been sleeping at the foot of Jake's bed when he suddenly stood up and moved to Jake's head, gently pawing at his human shoulder and making urgent whining sounds. Jake was still asleep and appeared peaceful, but Rex continued his efforts to wake him, becoming increasingly insistent in his gentle attempts to get Jake's attention. Dr. Veltar was about to intervene when the medical monitors suddenly erupted in alarm signals. Jake's brain activity was showing signs of a potentially fatal seizure beginning to develop, something that their equipment had detected only after Rex had already been trying to wake his human for several minutes. The dog had somehow sensed the approaching danger and was attempting to prevent it through his actions. The medical team quickly administered medication to prevent the seizure, and Jake woke up confused but unharmed. Rex immediately calmed down, settling beside his human with the satisfied air of a job well done. Dr. Veltar realized that he was witnessing something that could revolutionize medical science across multiple species. The third and most dramatic example came on Jake's 5th day of recovery. Rex had been unusually restless all morning, pacing around Jake's bed and occasionally placing his nose against specific areas of Jake's chest and abdomen. The dog seemed to be conducting his own medical examination, methodically checking different parts of his human's body with an intensity that suggested he was detecting something wrong. Dr. Veltar watched this behavior with growing interest, making detailed notes about Rex's movements and reactions. The dog spent the most time examining Jake's lower right abdomen, repeatedly returning to that area with obvious concern. His behavior became so persistent that Dr. Veltar decided to run additional scans of that region, even though their standard medical monitoring showed nothing unusual. The deep tissue scans revealed the beginning stages of internal bleeding that was so minor it had not yet registered on their regular equipment. The bleeding was caused by the alien disease attacking Jake's internal organs, and if left undetected, it would have become life-threatening within hours. Because of Rex's early warning, the medical team was able to treat the problem before it became critical. Word of these incidents spread quickly through the research station, attracting the attention of scientists from multiple disciplines. Dr. Helen Carter, a human xenobiologist who had been working on the station for 2 years, requested permission to observe and study the human-canine interaction. Dr. Veltar welcomed the collaboration, recognizing that understanding this phenomenon would require expertise from both human and alien perspectives. Dr. Carter brought a different viewpoint to their observations. As a human, she understood the emotional aspects of the bond between Jake and Rex in ways that the Zephyrians could not fully grasp. She also had extensive knowledge of Earth biology and animal behavior that proved crucial to their research. What we're seeing here goes far beyond simple pet ownership, Dr. Carter explained to Dr. Veltar as they watched Rex perform another of his spontaneous medical checks on Jake. Dogs have been bred by humans for thousands of years to be sensitive to human emotions and physical states. Some dogs are specifically trained to detect seizures, changes in blood sugar, or even certain types of cancer. But Rex is doing this naturally without any formal training. Dr. Veltar's forearms moved in the gesture that indicated deep thought among his people. The question is whether this capability exists in all members of this species, or if the long bond between these two individuals has created something unique. Their research revealed that Rex's abilities were indeed extraordinary, even by the May standards of his own species. The dog had developed an almost supernatural awareness of Jake's physical and emotional state, fine-tuned by years of constant companionship and mutual dependence. This bond had created a biological early warning system that was more sensitive and accurate than the most advanced medical technology. But the discoveries did not stop there. As Dr. Veltar and Dr. Carter continued their observations, they noticed that Rex's presence was actually triggering beneficial changes in Jake's body chemistry. The dog's proximity caused Jake to release increased levels of oxytocin, dopamine, and other chemicals associated with healing and stress reduction. Rex's steady breathing and heartbeat seemed to help regulate Jake's own biological rhythms, creating a feedback loop of mutual benefit. Most remarkably, they discovered that physical contact between Jake and Rex caused both of their immune systems to function more effectively. Jake's white blood cell count increased when Rex was touching him, and even Rex showed improved health markers during their close contact. It was as if the two beings were sharing biological resources, each making the other stronger and healthier. The implications of these discoveries were staggering. If the healing effects of human-animal bonds could be understood and replicated, it could lead to revolutionary advances in medical treatment for multiple species. The research also suggested that emotional connections between beings could have measurable physical benefits that science was only beginning to understand. Dr. Veltar began planning comprehensive studies to document every aspect of the Jake-Rex interaction, but he knew that they were dealing with something far more complex than simple biology. They were studying the power of love itself, and learning that the bonds between different species could create healing effects that transcended the boundaries of current scientific understanding. As word of their discoveries spread throughout the galactic medical community, researchers from dozens of different worlds requested permission to observe and study this remarkable partnership between a dying human and his faithful dog. The news of Rex's remarkable healing abilities spread through the galactic medical community like wildfire, attracting researchers and doctors from across multiple star systems. Within a week of the initial discoveries, the research station had become the center of the most important medical breakthrough in decades. Scientists who had never shown interest in human biology were requesting permission to study the bond between Jake Morrison and his extraordinary dog. Dr. Helen Carter found herself working around the clock, collaborating with alien researchers to document every aspect of the human-canine connection. Her expertise in Earth biology made her invaluable to the multi-species research team that had formed around Jake and Rex. What they were discovering challenged fundamental assumptions about healing, consciousness, and the biological effects of emotional bonds. The breakthrough moment came during Jake's second week of recovery when Dr. Carter noticed something unprecedented in his blood work. The alien plague that had been systematically destroying his immune system was not just stabilizing, it was actually beginning to retreat. The viral load in his bloodstream was decreasing daily, something that should have been impossible given the aggressive nature of the disease. Dr. Veltar, you need to see these results, Dr. Carter called out as she reviewed the latest test data. The Zephyrian doctor moved to her workstation with his characteristic graceful efficiency, his large black eyes scanning the information on her display screen. The data showed that Jake's body was producing previously unknown compounds that seemed specifically designed to combat the alien virus. These healing chemicals were being generated in response to Rex's presence, triggered by the complex cascade of hormones and neural activity that occurred during their physical contact. It was as if Jake's body had learned to manufacture its own cure through the power of his bond with Rex. Dr. Veltar's four arms moved in rapid gestures of excitement and disbelief. This is extraordinary. The human immune system is adapting and evolving in real time, using the emotional and physical connection with the creature as a catalyst for biological change. Word of this discovery reached Commander Krixtal within hours, and the stern Zephyrian leader arrived at the medical bay to witness the phenomenon himself. Crystal had initially viewed the mission to retrieve Rex as wasteful and illogical, but now he watched with growing amazement as Jake's recovery continued to accelerate. The commander observed silently as Rex performed one of his routine examinations of Jake, the dog's nose carefully checking different areas of his human's body before settling contentedly beside him. The monitoring equipment showed immediate improvements in Jake's vital signs whenever Rex made contact, and the readings remained elevated for hours afterward. "I must admit," Commander Crixtal said to Dr. Veltar in private, "I was wrong to oppose this mission. What we are witnessing here may be the most important medical discovery in our civilization's history." Other patients on the station, both human and alien, began requesting to observe Jake and Rex in action. Word had spread that something miraculous was happening in the medical bay, and beings who had given up hope for their own recovery found themselves inspired by the sight of a dying human being healed through the love of his companion animal. Dr. Sarah Kim, a human doctor who had been treating other plague victims, approached Dr. Carter with an unusual request. "I have 3 human patients who are in the final stages of the disease," she explained. "They've asked if they could spend time near Jake and Rex, not for any medical benefit, but just to see proof that recovery is possible." The meeting between Jake and the other human patients became an emotional turning point for everyone involved. Jake, now strong enough to sit up in bed with Rex beside him, spoke quietly with his fellow humans about hope and healing. Rex seemed to understand the importance of the moment, allowing each patient to pet him and experience the calming effect of his presence. What happened next surprised even the most optimistic researchers. All 3 patients showed measurable improvements in their condition after spending time with Jake and Rex. Their immune responses strengthened, their vital signs stabilized, and their bodies began producing trace amounts of the same healing compounds that were curing Jake. It was as if Rex's healing effect could be transmitted through proximity and shared experience. Dr. Veltar began documenting these secondary effects with meticulous care. The implications were staggering, suggesting that the healing power of emotional bonds could potentially be transferred between individuals and even between species. Rex was not just healing Jake, he was becoming a source of hope and biological healing for others simply through his presence and example. The research team expanded to include psychologists, behavioral specialists, and experts in consciousness studies from multiple worlds. They were no longer just studying a medical phenomenon. They were investigating the fundamental nature of healing itself and the role that love and emotional connection played in biological recovery. Rex adapted to his new role as the center of galactic attention with remarkable grace. The dog seemed to understand that he was helping not just Jake but others as well, and he allowed researchers to study him while never straying far from his human side. His calm, intelligent demeanor impressed even the most skeptical scientists, many of whom had never encountered an Earth animal before. Jake's recovery accelerated beyond all expectations. By the end of his 3rd week on the station, he was able to walk short distances with Rex at his side. The alien plague that had nearly killed him was now undetectable in his system, completely eliminated by his body's newly activated healing responses. The medical team prepared to publish their findings, knowing that they were about to revolutionize medicine across dozens of species. Commander Crixtal personally contacted the Galactic Medical Council to report their discoveries. "We have documented proof that emotional bonds between species can trigger biological healing responses that surpass our most advanced medical technology," he announced. "This research must be shared immediately with all civilizations." The Zephyrian leader, who had once dismissed human emotional attachments as primitive, was now advocating for galaxy-wide studies of interspecies bonding. The transformation in his thinking reflected a broader change that was occurring throughout the scientific community as they grappled with the implications of what they had witnessed. Rex, meanwhile, continued his devoted care of Jake, unaware that his simple love and loyalty had sparked a medical revolution that would transform healing practices across the galaxy. The dog who had traveled across the stars to answer his human's final call had become the catalyst for discoveries that would save countless lives and forever change how different species understood the power of love and connection. Jake Morrison stood on his own 2 feet for the first time in over a month, his hand resting on Rex's head for support and comfort as much as balance. The transformation in his health seemed almost impossible to believe, even to the medical team that had documented every step of his recovery. What had begun as a dying man's final wish had evolved into the most comprehensive study of interspecies healing ever conducted in galactic history. Dr. Veltar watched with satisfaction as Jake took his first steps around the medical bay, Rex staying perfectly positioned beside him to provide stability and encouragement. The Zephyrian doctor had filled dozens of data files with observations about the human-canine bond, but he knew that they had only scratched the surface of understanding this remarkable phenomenon. The research had attracted attention from medical institutions across 17 different star systems, and the space station now hosted scientists from species that had never collaborated before. The common goal of understanding the healing power of emotional bonds had brought together beings who normally had little interest in each other's biology or culture. Dr. Helen Carter approached Jake as he completed his walk around the medical bay, Rex wagging his tail with obvious pride in his human's progress. "Jake, we've received approval from Galactic Medical Command to establish a formal research program based on your recovery," she announced. "They want to study the human-animal bond as a potential treatment for diseases across multiple species." Jake looked down at Rex, whose brown eyes seemed to sparkle with intelligence and satisfaction. "Did you hear that, boy? You're going to be famous across the galaxy." Rex's tail wagged harder, and he gave a soft bark that seemed to express his willingness to help however he could. The first phase of the expanded research involved bringing other companion animals from Earth to study their healing effects on human patients. Dr. Carter had compiled a list of different species that formed strong bonds with humans, including cats, horses, and even some birds that had shown therapeutic potential. Each animal would be tested to see if they could produce similar healing responses to those demonstrated by Rex. Commander Krickstall personally oversaw the establishment of the new research facility, which occupied an entire section of the space station. The Zephyrian leader had become one of the strongest advocates for the program, his own understanding transformed by witnessing Jake's miraculous recovery. "We are embarking on a new era of medicine," he declared at the facility's opening ceremony, "one that recognizes the healing power of emotional connections between all living beings." The most fascinating development came when Zephyrian researchers began exploring whether similar healing bonds existed within their own species. Dr. Veltar worked with behavioral specialists to identify Zephyrian creatures that formed emotional attachments comparable to the human-dog relationship. They discovered several species on the Zephyrian homeworld that showed promise for therapeutic applications. The breakthrough with Zephyrian companion therapy came through a creature called a Velani, a small, graceful being with luminescent fur and empathic abilities that allowed it to sense the emotional and physical states of other creatures. When paired with 6 Zephyrians, the Velani showed remarkable abilities to provide comfort and trigger healing responses, similar to what Rex accomplished with humans. Jake found himself at the center of this expanding research as both a recovered patient and an expert consultant on human-animal bonds. His experience with Rex made him uniquely qualified to help other species understand the importance of emotional connection and healing. He worked closely with alien researchers to explain the nuances of interspecies bonding that only someone who had lived through such a relationship could truly understand. Rex adapted to his new role with characteristic intelligence and grace. The dog seemed to understand that he was helping teach others about the healing power of love and loyalty. He patiently allowed researchers from multiple species to observe him, study him, and learn from his interactions with Jake. His calm, friendly demeanor made him an ideal ambassador for Earth animals throughout the galactic community. The research revealed that the healing effects of companion bonding were not limited to the specific species involved, but could be adapted and modified for different biological systems. The emotional and chemical responses that Rex triggered in Jake's recovery could be replicated and enhanced through careful study and application across various species combinations. Dr. Veltar published the first comprehensive paper on interspecies healing therapy, crediting Jake and Rex as the catalysts for a new understanding of medicine that incorporated emotional and psychological factors alongside traditional biological treatments. The paper was distributed to medical institutions across the galaxy and became required reading for doctors and researchers in dozens of civilizations. The success of the program led to the establishment of companion therapy centers on worlds throughout the galaxy. Each center was staffed with specialists trained in the principles discovered through studying Jake and Rex, and each maintained populations of therapeutic animals specifically selected and trained for healing work. The centers became beacons of hope for patients suffering from diseases that traditional medicine could not cure. Jake and Rex became regular visitors to these therapy centers, helping to train both animals and medical staff in the techniques that had saved Jake's life. Rex seemed to enjoy his role as a teacher, demonstrating for other dogs how to detect changes in human physiology and how to provide the physical and emotional support that triggered healing responses. The most rewarding aspect of their work came from meeting patients whose lives had been saved through companion therapy. Jake spoke with humans, Zephyrians, and beings from other species who had recovered from terminal illnesses through the healing power of emotional bonds with carefully selected companion animals. Each success story reinforced the importance of the work that had begun with Rex's simple devotion to his human. Commander Krickstall often reflected on how wrong he had been to initially oppose the mission to retrieve Rex from Earth. What he had viewed as a waste of resources and an illogical indulgence of human emotion had become the foundation for medical advances that were saving lives across multiple civilizations. The stern Zephyrian leader had learned that sometimes the most important scientific discoveries came from the most unexpected sources. Rex, for his part, seemed content with his new life as a galactic pioneer of healing. He had saved his humans' life through the power of love and loyalty, and now he was helping to save countless others through the knowledge gained from their extraordinary bond. The dog who had once waited by a window on Earth for his human to come home had become a symbol of hope and healing that spanned the stars. As Jake watched Rex interact with a young Zephyrian patient who was learning to bond with her own therapeutic companion, he realized that their journey together was far from over. They had become part of something much larger than themselves, a revolution in healing that would continue to grow and evolve for generations to come. 6 months after Rex's arrival at the research station, Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck with his faithful companion beside him, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed cold and distant, but warm with possibilities. The transformation in both their lives had been beyond anything either could have imagined when Jake had made his desperate final request to see his dog one more time. Rex had grown comfortable with life aboard the space station, adapting to the artificial gravity and recycled air with the same calm intelligence he had shown throughout his extraordinary journey. The dog had become something of a celebrity among the station's inhabitants, but he remained focused on his primary mission of caring for Jake and helping other patients who needed healing. The companion therapy program had expanded beyond anyone's wildest expectations, with treatment centers now operating on 47 different worlds across the galaxy. Each center was based on the principles discovered through studying Jake and Rex's bond, adapted for the specific biological and cultural needs of different species. The success rate for patients treated with companion therapy was remarkable, often exceeding traditional medical treatments by significant margins. Dr. Veltar approached Jake and Rex on the observation deck, his forearms carrying a data pad, filled with the latest reports from therapy centers across the galaxy. The Zephyrian doctor had become not just a researcher, but a close friend to both Jake and Rex. His understanding of biology and healing forever changed by their example. The latest reports show remarkable success, Dr. Veltar announced, his musical voice carrying notes of satisfaction and amazement. The therapy center on Arcturus Prime reports a 93% recovery rate for patients with advanced neurological disorders. The Centauri facility has completely eliminated certain types of psychological trauma that were previously considered untreatable. Jake smiled as he scratched Rex behind the ears, feeling the familiar warmth and comfort that had sustained him through his darkest hours. "It's hard to believe that all of this started with one sick man wanting to see his dog," he said softly. Rex looked up at Jake with those intelligent brown eyes that seemed to hold depths of understanding about their shared journey. The dog had always been intuitive about Jake's moods and needs, but their experience on the space station had deepened their connection to levels that amazed even the scientists who studied them daily. Commander Krickstall joined them at the observation window, his presence no longer carrying the stern authority it once had. The Zephyrian leader had been profoundly changed by witnessing the healing power of love and emotional connection, and he now advocated for companion therapy programs throughout the Galactic Alliance. Captain Morrison, the commander said formally, then paused and smiled in the way that Zephyrians had learned from watching humans. Jake, I have news that I think will please you. The Galactic Medical Council has approved funding for companion therapy research centers on every inhabited world in the Alliance. Your bond with Rex has literally changed medicine for billions of beings. The scope of their impact was almost impossible to comprehend. What had begun as Jake's final wish to see his beloved dog had grown into a medical revolution that was transforming lives across multiple star systems. The research had proven that emotional bonds between different species could trigger biological healing responses that surpassed the most advanced technology. Dr. Helen Carter arrived with her own exciting news, her face bright with enthusiasm as she approached the group. Jake, we just received confirmation that Earth has agreed to establish a companion animal training academy specifically for galactic therapy programs. Dogs, cats, horses, and other Earth animals will be trained and sent to therapy centers throughout the galaxy. Rex's tail wagged at the mention of other Earth animals, as if he understood that his fellow creatures would soon be joining him in this important work. The dog had proven to be an excellent teacher, helping to train other animals in the techniques of medical detection and emotional support that made companion therapy so effective. The success of the program had also led to unexpected cultural exchanges between different species. Beings who had never shown interest in other civilizations were now eager to learn about the emotional bonds and companion relationships that existed in different cultures. The galaxy was becoming more connected and understanding through the simple example of love between a human and his dog. Jake reflected on how much his life had changed since that dark day when he had thought he was dying alone on an alien world. Rex had not only saved his life but had shown the entire galaxy something profound about the nature of healing and connection. The dog, who had once been content to wait by a window for his human to come home, had become a bridge between species and a symbol of hope for countless beings. The research had revealed that companion bonds existed in various forms throughout the galaxy, but each species expressed and experienced these connections differently. Humans and their animals represented just one example of the healing power that could emerge from love and loyalty between different kinds of beings. As Jake watched a transport ship dock with the station, bringing new researchers and patients from distant worlds, he realized that their story was still being written. Rex sat beside him with the calm dignity that had made him beloved throughout the station, his presence a constant reminder that the most powerful medicine in the universe might simply be love. Dr. Veltar made final entries in his research logs, documenting another day in the ongoing study of human-canine healing bonds. What we have learned from Jake and Rex has applications that extend far beyond medicine, he noted. They have shown us that emotional connections between beings can literally change biology, that love can heal in ways we never understood before. The transformation that had begun with a dying soldier's request to see his dog had become a legacy that would endure for generations. Medical students across the galaxy now learned about the Morrison-Rex protocol as a fundamental principle of healing. Companion therapy had become as important as surgery or medication in treating serious illnesses. Rex seemed to understand the magnitude of what they had accomplished together. The dog remained devoted to Jake while also embracing his role as a healer and teacher for others. His gentle patience with sick patients and his ability to detect and respond to medical crises had made him legendary among medical professionals throughout the galaxy. As the day cycle on the station began to dim toward evening, Jake and Rex prepared to return to their quarters. They passed through corridors where beings from dozens of different worlds worked together on research that had been inspired by their bond. The sight of humans, Zephyrians, and other species collaborating in harmony was itself a testament to the bridges that love could build between different kinds of life. In their quiet quarters, Jake sat in his favorite chair with Rex's head resting on his lap, both of them content with the knowledge that their journey together had become something far greater than either had ever imagined. They had proven that Love transcends species, that healing comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most important scientific discoveries emerge from the simplest expressions of devotion between friends. The story that had begun with a man's last request to see his dog had become a tale of hope that would inspire beings across the galaxy for centuries to come. Jake Morrison and Rex had shown the universe that its greatest strength lay not in technology or conquest, but in the infinite capacity for love and healing that exists wherever different forms of life choose to connect with open hearts.